Welcome to the hashtag Let's Get Louder LMF's podcast. You found me, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, what's left of Google. I'm glad to have you. I am Chase Blake, the loud Miami fan. And it's great to be here with you whenever you're listening or watching this live. Well, let's jump right in it. So much stuff to talk about. The Marlins are scoring so many runs this spring. It is insane. And if you're a Marlins fan, you understand that none of that is true. The Marlins, for the most part, have scored 1 run per game, if that. Some games have been 0-0 during the first week of 7 games of spring training. But good news is, ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls, none of it matters because this is spring training. And the most important thing about spring training is getting to the regular season with your starting infielders, your starting outfielders, your pitchers, your catchers, your 26-man roster or 27-man roster for the first week or so are healthy going into the beginning of the season, which is less than a month away. Today of this recording, it is March 1st, which means that there is only 27 days left until opening day 2024. That alone is worth getting excited for. Honk your horns if you're listening in the car. Jump and give me a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle if you're home listening to this or on a walk. Because baseball is almost back. And it's been a fun week hearing the bats crack, the catcher's glove catching the ball, the grunts, the oohs, the ahs of the crowd in spring training ball. I had the opportunity last weekend and will again this upcoming weekend to go to a few spring training games. Saw the Marlins live, got some autographs, talked to Braxton Garrett. He's doing all right. Had a nice conversation with the future of this bullpen in Patrick Monteverde and Anthony Maldonado. Had a good conversation with Anthony Bender for 45 seconds. He said his arm's good, and oh, woo-wee, did he look good in his debut on Sunday and his second appearance this week. So the pitchers look to be ahead of the hitters. As you've seen starts by Jesus Luzardo. He's had 2 starts, including today, versus the Philadelphia Phillies. Both starts, he looked well through 2 innings in each. You had A.J. Puck get a start. Tomorrow in Jupiter, you're going to get a Yuri Perez start. Max Meyer pitched yesterday. That's something awesome to talk about. Max Meyer back for the first time in over 500 days, back on a mound, throwing against live opponent hitters. And he did not satisfy us. He came out, gave up a hit, and then he was lights out from there. That curveball and that breaking ball, wow. He is definitely a starter. Ryan Weathers has had 2 starts. In both of his starts, he's looked good. His second start against the Yankees, he looked better than he did in his first start versus St. Louis. But growing pains are going to happen. This is spring, and our pitchers are fired. You know, you think when you lose Sandy Alcantara that your pitching staff is going to take a hit. And yes, Sandy has thrown over 200 innings in every season for the last couple years, and we're going to miss that. But we have 1 through 7 guys who can make it possible to really make a difference and not make the loss of Sandy feel so painful. So with that being said, what are we going to talk about on this episode? As I mentioned, our hitters aren't doing as well as our pitchers. Let's go there for a minute. Luis Arraez, 0 for 7. Jazz. I don't know the numbers, but I know he has a couple hits. He's looked good this spring. Jake Berger, Josh Bell, no power yet. Um, the Marlins big boppers not hitting those home runs. If you were going to say who's going to hit the home runs this season, I bet you the name Tristan Gray did not come to mind. None of the Marlins Fish on First staff, which I recommend you go to fishonfirst.com, check out their content, give them a super subscribe. They also put all the Miami Marlins related or Miami baseball related uh, podcasts, including mine, in one place. So when you're done listening or watching this content, go check them out at fishonfirst.com. But no one really had Tristan Gray being the first to hit a home run this preseason or spring training season, and he was the first on Saturday. Got it going, got us the win. You look at later this week, he had a second home run. So he has two home runs in this short preseason or spring training season. Does Tristan Gray? Don't think he's going to make the 26-man roster. He's not currently on the 40-man roster, so we'll just wait and see. But it's good to have a guy like that in your system in case one of your infielders goes down. The guy plays almost every position that's not pitcher or catcher around the diamond and in the outfield. So that's good to have. Another guy who's shining right now, and he twisted his ankle today, unfortunately, is Troy Johnston. Look, if you were to say to the Miami Marlins, you should protect Troy Johnston from the Rule 5 draft and you should put him on your 40-man roster in November, well, we all said it, and they didn't do it, and he was not taken in the Rule 5 draft by any other team. He was the Marlins' best hitter in the minor leagues last offseason, or last season, I should say. Goes into the offseason, is not protected, not taken in the Rule 5. Instead, he's happily back in the Marlins uh, organization, and he's trying to make the best of it. Skip Schumacher talking great about him, and he's had a good preseason so far. He has multiple hit games. He's the first to have a 3-for-3 game, and he's had multiple games with hits. He's just really doing well, and you hope that the twist of his ankle didn't really hurt him in the ninth inning today against the Phillies. Or the eighth inning against the Phillies. I forget which one it was. Regardless, it was towards the end of the game, and he had to leave the game at least for one half inning when the Marlins were on the field. But really, the rest of the team needs to light their bats on fire as there's only 3 weeks left of spring. Again, that's a long time. I say that openly. I'm not worried about it. I really am not. Brian De La Cruz started off right where he left off last season, and that is leading the way for the RBIs for this team. I believe he has like he has like 5 or 6 already in this young spring. His first game, he had 4. I think he got a couple today, if not one or the 3, somewhere in that range. Jesus Sanchez has started off well. Dane Myers, he's been fun to watch. Dane Myers, when he's gotten on base, he's making the best of it and the most of it. He's actually stolen 2 bases this spring. So, and this is just a week in. We're only 7 games in. So this is the type of stuff that you look for. Who's going to shine who? I'm going to give you one of my best spring training moments of being live at a spring training game. And this is kind of leading to what I was just talking about. Who's going to make the most out of the moments? Jazz Chisholm Jr., back in 2021, he had gotten a little taste of baseball being brought up because of COVID and whatnot for the Miami Marlins, but he was not in the 26-man roster going into spring in 2021. I believe he was on the 40-man, but not the 26. And what happened is he outshined the others at the second base position. I believe it was Isan Diaz, who was the starting second baseman going into spring. He sat out most of the COVID year, either because of the COVID restriction or the the option of not playing, or he sat out because of injury. I think both throughout. Uh, and he came into spring. He was supposed to come out of spring, the second baseman, but Jazz Chisholm Jr. just outshined everyone. And that's what spring's about for these young guys. It's already been three spring trainings ago. But I'll never forget Jazz on the second at bat of the 2021 spring on February 28th, 2021. Second pitch in his first at bat hits a home run. And that started that game. Marlins blew out the Astros, I believe, in the Palm Beach ballpark that game. But I'm just kind of getting what spring's about. And it's players like that, players like Jazz in 2021 who show that they have to make the team. The Marlins, of course, waited and waited and waited to the end of spring to tell him that he has made the roster and will be in the opening day starting lineup, which is so cool. And that's what you look for in these young guys. And Troy Johnston and Dane Myers making a name for themselves, whether it be through hits, fielding, or stealing. And Tristan Gray as well. It's going to be tough when guys like Brujan have to be on this roster. Guys like Nick Gordon have to be on this roster, and he's having a decent spring as well. But if they have to hold a roster spot, these young guys and other guys have to outshine them. Xavier Edwards, he's going to have to play a little bit better. I'm a big X guy here. I like Xavier Edwards a lot, and he showed a lot in the end of the season last year. Would help the Marlins in that playoff push with stolen bases and just bunting and playing hard. But he's fighting for a roster spot right now because he has options where Brujan and Nick Gordon don't. We talked about this going in. Of course, we talked about this before Tim Anderson was picked up, and he started his first game yesterday versus the Yankees. Didn't do much at the plate, but had a really spectacular throw, a really tough play just on the the outfield part of the infield, so on the grass, where he really had to throw it hard to first to get the out for a speedy guy from the Yankees, and he did so. So he even said, look, it's my first time swinging against competition, but just like the rest of the team, he didn't do so well, but he says, look, I'm going to get better. So all good things for Tim Anderson. But having Tim Anderson, of course, as we spoke about, is just bottlenecking this roster, and we're happy to have him. He needs to be on that roster, and he will be. But the guys like Vidal Brujan, Nick Gordon, they also have to be on this roster. And I don't know about Vidal Brujan. He's had a not so shiny spring so far. He's going to have to pick it up because if guys like Troy Johnston and Tristan Gray, if they keep playing the way they're playing, they're going to make this team. And Brujan may be cut. Speaking of cut, if you listen to another podcast called the Locked On Marlins podcast with Peter Pratt, I love Peter. Again, this is another one of the Marlins podcast networks that you should listen to. Mine being one of them, Fish on First, Locked On Marlins. There's the Battered Fish Fan podcast. Definitely got to check them out. But speaking about Peter, he is really down, as most of us are, on one guy, and that guy is Avisail Garcia. Unfortunately, Avisail Garcia is making $12.5 million, and they are not going to keep him on the bench to make that money. It's not like an old veteran that has made a difference. It's not a Miguel Cabrera situation where he's made all the difference in your franchise. You are letting him run out his contract out of respect for him. We owe Avisail Garcia nothing. This fan base owes Avisail Garcia nothing. And Avisail Garcia is holding up a roster spot for one of these young guys that I had just mentioned. Will Tristan Gray not make the roster, or will Troy Johnston not make the roster because of a struggling Avisail Garcia? You hope not to see it. And if you listen to Peter Pratt, he went on a huge rant about it. I believe that was Tuesday or Wednesday's Locked On Marlins episode. It's even titled Avisail Garcia, Why Is He Still Here? I don't think there's any fans that don't agree with him. I'm not going to make the rant like Peter did, but I'm so so on board with Avisel being Garcia. Like, get off this roster. You don't belong on this team. You are hurting this team. Of course, it's spring. They'll probably get most of the spring to continue to try to impress, try to get hits. But oh boy, does Avisayo Garcia look like he's just taking the money and doesn't want to be here. I mean, the guy struck out in a preseason game in a year that he's a show me and trying to make this team. Again, he's most likely going to make the team because of the money, but he's not showing it, and he struck out on one of those violations or time clock violations. He had a few of those last year. Dude needs to learn. This game's moving forward, and he needs to move with it. And if he's not going to move with it, go be on the Savannah Bananas. Go be their competition. Go make a mockery of the game there, because this game has changed. There is a shot clock. There is a pitch clock, shot clock, pitch clock for you to follow. So if you're not going to follow it, do not hurt this team getting struck out because of a pitch clock violation. It's unexcusable. You had all last year. Yes, you were injured most of last year, but you had all last year to prepare for it, all last spring, and it happened last spring too, where obviously Garcia struck out, or at least got a called strike on one of those pitch clock violations. Things look like they haven't changed. The Fish on First team reported that he practiced all spring with Luis Arise, and you really hope that come season time or as we get closer, it shows, because the only one who is feeling the effects of practicing of that duo is just Luis Arise. Not worried. Dude's going to be fine. He's 0 for 7 this spring. Again, he's the two-time batting champion. He didn't forget how to hit. Just taking some time for these position players to get their bats ready. Another thing to think about is last offseason was the 2023 World Baseball Classic. And a lot of these guys came in heated up already into the season because they played in the World Baseball Classic. They played meaningful games. Their adrenaline got going earlier. They had a couple weeks early to practice, but they don't this season. So you're seeing your full, actually the first real spring training in a few years. If you think about it, you had COVID, then you had the COVID preseason, which was limited fans in 2021, and all these rules of engagement and touching with the players, and how many players can be on the field and in the dugout. Then came 2022, and it was I believe that was the lockout preseason or spring training. So that wasn't a normal spring training. And then last spring training in 2023, it was a World Baseball Classic. So you didn't have your full squad for the whole spring. A lot of the guys, the bigger names, the bigger stars for their countries, were in meaningful games. This is the first real spring, I want to say, since 2019. Because even going back to 2020, you had the half spring, and then this spring training ended abruptly in mid-March when everybody started coming down with COVID and during the pandemic. So this is truly the first real official spring training, normal, full spring training since 2019. Something to think about. And these guys were just not used to it. And these guys will be healthy, hopefully, and will get those bats going as soon as they can. I'm going to pause here for a second. Take a deep breath. If you're watching, hi, waving to you. If you're listening, pretend or picture me waving to you, and go check out YouTube channel, hashtag Let's Get Louder, LMF's podcast on YouTube. And please subscribe. I have about 27 subscribers, and that's in a week. Got to get to 1,000, and it's going to be fans like you that are going to help me get there, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I did post on the at LMF podcast Twitter for any questions that you want answered for this podcast. So I'm going to go and see some of the questions, if any were asked, on using that hashtag AskLMF, hashtag Let's Get Louder at LMF Podcast. And I do have one. It is from Red Smasher, Andrew Martin. He says, which pitcher did you see in person that was most electrifying? Someone you would drop everything to see live? That's a great question from Andrew. I've seen so many amazing baseball players, amazing pitchers throughout the last 30 seasons, going into 31 seasons now as a Marlins fan. I've seen the likes of Kerry Wood. I've seen the likes of Greg Maddux. I've seen Al Leiter. So many Marlins pitchers were electric throughout that time, whether it be D Train and really changing the 2003 season. However, there's one pitcher that I would love to be alive and to see a pitch again because he had the most electric, as you call it, attitude, most electric smile, and most electric pitcher would be our very own, rest in peace, JDF 16, uh, Jose Fernandez. Uh, we love you, we miss you, and he was definitely um, the most electric pitcher I've seen on the mound. Sandy's great, right? Yuri's going to be great. He shows signs of it. Um, Dontrell, as I previously mentioned, Carl Pavano was really good. Um, I'm missing AJ Burnett. I'm missing Josh Beckett here. If you go back to Levon Hernandez in his opening season, was electric. Marlins have had a plethora of amazing pitchers come through this organization, or at least pitch for this organization in some way, shape, or form, whether it be one game or multiple. And we've been really lucky to have that because there's some organizations that never get that real stud pitcher through there. And take in the positivity that is this organization and who's come through it. Uh, Even though they ultimately end up pitching for another team for the most part, um, we have had some studs come through, and they're coming through right now. Again, let's go with our opening day starter. The Miami Marlins announced earlier than usual who is the opening day starter for 2024, and that is South Florida born. Well, South Florida's own. Uh, really born and raised down here, except he wasn't born in Florida. I believe he was born in Peru. But Jesus Luzardo is the opening day starter, number 44 in the 31st season of the Miami Marlins organization. So congrats to the hometown kid. Grew up in South Florida, Broward County. His family still lives there. I believe he does too now. And it's really awesome for Jesus Luzardo to be throwing out the first pitch for his hometown team on an opening day. And if Sandy didn't get injured, this may not have happened. Who knows? But he is the stud. He is the ace of this group now. He's the leader of this group. And whether he's traded in a future season or he signs a long-term extension, he is going to be our best pitcher this season. And he's been lights out in 4 innings, 2 games this preseason so far. So congrats to Jesus Luzardo, legit. He talked about how he would go to opening day and skip school to see the likes of Josh Beckett, Dontrell Willis throw one opening day, and other pitchers throughout his lifetime as a Marlins fan. And for him to really have that opportunity is special. So nothing but love for Jesus Luzardo. Personally, I hope he's here for a long time. I'd understand if they traded him and did the Rays way for a lot of future prospects for the org, but I don't think that's happening, at least not before opening day, because they've announced it. They've made the marketing for it. Hopefully he's on this team and we're competing into the deadline this year and for future to come. But this team is stacked with pitching. Jesus Luzardo. Braxton Garrett hasn't thrown yet. as far as in games so far due to his shoulder, but he was pretty good last season. You have Yuri Perez, who is the future ace of this team. You have Max Meyer, as I've mentioned earlier in the show. He had a lights out couple innings, gave up a hit, but other than that, really lights out couple of innings. That breaking ball is disgusting and fooled anyone who was in that batter's box. So the future's good there. You have Eddie Cabrera, who almost was traded to the Pirates. We'll say that's a rumor. Was almost traded to the Pirates, and he did really well in his first couple games or innings, I should say. And then you had AJ Puck. AJ Puck no longer going to be a bullpen guy. Maybe our fifth starter. We still haven't seen Trevor Rogers pitch. They're taking him slow. But when everyone's healthy, this team is really going to be successful from the pitching standpoint. And as long as the pitchers could keep the runs low in games, the Marlins can win a bunch of one-run games again. Hopefully the offense doesn't put them in that position. But if it needs to be, they can do it. And I have all the faith in this pitching staff and Mel Stoudemire, what they've done. Skip Schumacher tells you to skip whatever you're doing on March 28th to make it to Lone Depot Park. I agree with him. Come out to Marlins game. The opening day is the best game to be in the year except the playoff game. It's everybody's happy. It's a brand new season. The lights are on. It's a great place to be in the afternoon. It's a Thursday afternoon this year, March 28th. You don't get every season to start off at home. Sometimes you start off on the road. Fortunately, for the fifth year in a row, we will be starting at home, or fourth year in a row. We hope it goes better with the new pitcher on the mound and Jesus Luzardo. Come support the young guy out of South Florida. Again, he's our ace, opening day starter this season. We'll have another few episodes to discuss more as we move forward into the season, trying to get one of these out a week. Hope you're enjoying my fun videos as well, my preseason training, which you can see on my TikTok or Instagram. I also posted on Twitter, but TikTok's just better to view, and you can add me on any of the social media platforms at Loud Miami Fan. That's Twitter, TikTok, that new one that came out from Instagram itself. The only one you can't find me on is Facebook. I'm on all the other apps, and of course the new YouTube channel at Loud Miami Fan, at Let's Get Louder podcast. I hope that you follow me. You see me in these live videos. Once I figure out how to produce them really well and put music and an entrance video, it's going to be really nice. But right now, you just get me talking right off the bat. And it's become the same way on the podcast because once I record this, I put it onto the pod, which you might be listening to. So no matter how you're ingesting or digesting the hashtag Let's Get Louder podcast, I greatly appreciate you. You see me, if you're watching, I'm wearing this All That Jazz t-shirt by InTheClutch.com. If you go to In the Clutch, they have 6 Players Association approved shirts. You won't find a Miami Marlins shirt, but you'll find the players in our organization shirts. And you'll also find hashtag Let's Get Louder gear. So check that out. Not so much an ad, but just telling you some cool things to check out. Of course, if you did buy on In the Clutch, you could use the promotional code LMF at checkout. That's LMF, Loud Miami Fan, LMF at checkout for, I believe it's 15% off. So with that being said, we are smack dab going into the second week of the spring training season. We have a home game tomorrow in Jupiter. I will be there on Saturday, March 2nd. I will be in the West Palm Beach ballpark of the Palm Beaches. I don't even know who we're facing. I just love going to that ballpark on Sunday. And hopefully we get some Marlins wins. Wins, losses, really doesn't matter. Let's get these guys stretched. Let's keep them injury-free. And we continue to raise the decibel as we go into the 2024 season. Let me know if you enjoyed the show. Hashtag Let's Get Louder. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, rate, like all of my pages. I definitely like your feedback. So use hashtag AskLMF, and I'll answer your questions in one of the next show. So let's get louder. I hope to see and hear from you soon. Let's frickin' go.